to show our friends in Brussels that we are united in our purpose. MPs should vote with the government against Corbyn's pointless delay. I want everybody to know there are no circumstances in which I will ask Brussels to delay. We're leaving on the 31st of October, no ifs or buts. We will not accept any attempt to go back on our promises or scrub that referendum. And armed and fortified with that conviction, I believe we will get a deal at that crucial summit in October, a deal that Parliament will certainly be able to scrutinise. And in the meantime, let's let our negotiators get on with their work without that sword of Damocles over their necks and without an election. Without an election. I don't want an election. You don't want an election. Let's get on with the people's agenda. Fighting crime, improving the NHS, boosting schools, cutting the cost of living, unlocking talent and opportunity across the entire United Kingdom with infrastructure, education and technology. It is a massive agenda. Let's come together and get it done, and let's get Brexit done by October the 31st.
There are lots of reasons why people voted Brexit, but many of them are covered by one word: sovereignty. Brexiteers don't like to share it, from how many fish you can catch to who gets to live here and which court ultimately has the final say over British citizens. Many Brits get pretty cranky at the idea of having to follow rules and regulations set in Brussels, often by people they haven't voted for.
3 years after Britain voted to leave the European Union, the future of Brexit is still uncertain. After several delays, the deadline for the UK to leave is now the 31st of October, and the new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has taken a harder line than his predecessor, stating that Britain will leave on that date, do or die. Johnson has said he intends to negotiate a new deal with the European Union, which removes the Northern Ireland backstop, the position of last resort, to protect against a hard border there. The backstop would mean that Britain retains a close relationship with the EU indefinitely. He also wants to change the political declaration. But time's running out, and the EU has stood firm on its refusal to reopen the existing withdrawal agreement. Opposition parties had hoped to block a no-deal Brexit through legislation, but Johnson has asked the Queen to suspend Parliament from mid-September, a move that will shorten the time available to lawmakers to block a no-deal Brexit.
Well, it's no secret that the EU regrets Brexit and sees it as a historic mistake. If a country as large and as powerful as the United Kingdom wants to leave a club in which it helps shape the single market and benefits from security cooperation, among many other things, what does that say about the club itself? Nothing good. And so from the start, the EU's approach has been damage control.
The British pound has slumped since the UK voted to leave the EU, and it could fall even further in the event of a hard or no-deal Brexit. Now, that may be some good news for tourists hoping for a cheap trip to the UK, and for some British businesses which are export-heavy. But it's bad news for many. The cost of living for Brits is rising as imports become more expensive, and it's a similar story for some British businesses which have to import raw materials. Plus, all the uncertainty over what the future trading relationship will be between the UK and the EU, well, that's forced some businesses to already hit their contingency plans. Big banks, for example, have already moved some operations from the UK to the EU.
The UK has been in decline for a century. Brexit is a milestone on that downward trajectory. Far from taking back control and turning the UK's fortunes around, it will leave the kingdom's citizens more isolated from allies, alliances and markets. Economic growth will be slower, intelligence sharing curtailed. But it's not as bleak as it sounds. The UK still has clout. It remains one of the 5 permanent members of the world's most powerful diplomatic body, the UN Security Council. Change won't be overnight, but the future as it comes will depend more on the billions of people beyond its borders than in the past.
This is Coast Guard Sector Los Angeles on Channel 16. What is your position and number of persons on board? Over.
I can't breathe. Fire department crews were fighting the fire when the vessel sank 20 yards offshore in 64 feet of water.